Route salesman's delivery box. You found these often on the front porch, what I'm going to call an old country store. When I started thinking about what I was going to say about that, I quickly went down a rabbit hole, and one thing led to another to where I realized that this video wasn't going to get to its conclusion about all the different kinds of boxes that I own and love. It's going to have to be at least one more after this one, because talking about these storefront delivery boxes is going to take the rest of this video to be done with that. Because I started thinking about all these stores, and I think to start with, I'll just tell you that I've already made one video that included a conversation about a store such as the one I'm talking about, and that was the one in Herget, Arkansas. I have a video, I think the name of the video is Herget, Arkansas, and it recalls just such a store from my childhood memories. And on the front porch of that store was a great old big box, like the ones I'm talking about. I think it was there to deliver bread in, but I'm not sure because at that time I wasn't paying that much attention to things. My memory seems to recall it had a knee-high soda drink sign nailed to the front of it, but that might not be accurate either. I'm just going to say that the first box I'm going to talk about briefly is the one on the porch of the store in Herget, Arkansas. And all I'm going to tell you about that is there's already a video about Herget, Arkansas. Go watch it. You may have already seen a picture of a box I made because of that memory I had, which was not accurately a depiction of the real box that was at Herget, but was something I made because of that childhood memory I had. And Norman was right on the edge of the area that I frequented often as a grouse hunter. One of the things you do when you're out bird hunting is you get hungry, usually about lunchtime, and lunchtime's not a really good time for hunting quail or grouse, so you sometimes go, if there's a place nearby to get lunch, you might do that. And there was just such a place in Norman, an old country store. They had a deli in that store. They made a great sandwich out of ham and cheese, or pimento loaf and cheese, or they could put other condiments on it. And I'd often go there with my friend George Gooden. He was my primary hunting partner back in those years. George and I'd go there and we'd get us a sandwich and a bottle of Big Red, and we'd go out on the porch if the weather permitted, and we'd sit there and eat our sandwich and drink our Big Red at that store in Norman, Indiana. And that store, I think the building's still there. After it was a store, it became a restaurant. They remodeled the old store and turned it into a restaurant. I think the name of that restaurant was Hitchin' Post. It was pretty popular for a while and had good food. And then they built onto it and made a dance hall next to it back when country line dancing was popular. And that store became a restaurant and a dance hall. All of it's closed now and has been closed for a long time. Then we get over into Lawrence County, and I might as well stay in that same area. I'll go to Bartlettsville. Bartlettsville is not too far from Norman, and there was a store there. And later on, that store, I don't know where that store was always a restaurant or not, but part of the time that I'm talking about, it was maybe just a store, and part of the time it was a store and a restaurant. It was a restaurant called Maxine's. And usually when I was in that area, I was grouse hunting as well. And very often my hunting buddy was George Gooden. We'd go there and eat lunch. Maxine's Restaurant and Grocery in Bartlettsville, Indiana. That building's still there too, but I think somebody converted it quite a few years ago into living quarters, and it's like a home or some type of living quarters there in what was once the old Bartlettsville store. Not too far from Bartlettsville's Heltonville. And many of you know the place we call the Heltonville store nowadays. Or they call it, people from around Heltonville just call it Boneheads. Because Larry Fabian, affectionately known as Bonehead, he owns that store. And he bought that store and started a business there a lot of years ago, but I'm talking about years before that. And there used to be, I think, maybe 3 stores. I know 2 for sure. And if the other one wasn't a store, it was kind of like Maxine's. It was a restaurant there just past the high school there on 58. There were 2 stores there. One was on the left as you went past, after you went past the high school going north, and the other one was going north or going east. The other one was just down there on the right, just off on a little side road there, just past what I think is the Methodist church there. 3 grocery stores like that in Heltonville. They don't now, and I don't remember ever them having one, but probably they did, had a delivery box, just like the one I'm talking about or trying to talk about in these videos. Stay on the east side of Bedford now, and let's go to Tunnelton. Tunnelton had, again, 2 or 3 stores like this. I don't know that I was ever in a store in Tunnelton that I can remember and tell you anything about. I know there was one and about where it was, and I think there was more than one. I'm just going to say there was stores of this nature in Tunnelton, Indiana. And I have, or I don't have now, but I purchased what I'm going to call a back bar. The old 2-piece unit where you got a long, low things with a lot of cabinet doors in it, sitting on the bottom and shelves, and they used it for storage. And then on top of that was another thing with doors and drawers and whatnot in it. And they call that a back bar. Sit against the wall in stores like this. It was used to store and display merchandise. I bought one time in Tunnelton, come out of one of these stores, sold it later to Doug Jenkins. You're probably looking at a picture of it now as I speak. Not too far from Tunnelton is another community called Fort Ritner. And Fort Ritner had a store just like this. They had a box on the porch part of the time. The latter years that the store was there in Fort Ritner, they quit taking those kind of deliveries. I guess that box was gone. But much the same as all these other stores. The one in Norman, like the one in various other places. Hudson's Grocery in Fort Ritner, Indiana. And the thing I want to mention about that, there's 2 things I want to mention about it. The first thing is, in that store, over on the other side of the tables where you could sit down and eat from where the deli was when you went in the store, over on the other side of the store, on the wall, there were pictures of the 1937 flood. And there were pictures taken in and around the store and in the neighborhood, Fort Ritner, during that flood of the high water and the situation that they had when White River flooded in 1937. Maybe there was other pictures too. I think there was an earlier flood than that in the teens. There were pictures of that flood, and there were pictures of what we refer to in Lawrence County as the tunnel, or the big tunnel, and it's the one through the hillside there between Tunnelton and Fort Ritner. When I was in high school, everybody went there to go through that train tunnel and tell scary stories about what went on in that train tunnel. When that tunnel was being built, there were pictures of it, and old pictures of that progress on the tunnel were on the store there in Hudson's Grocery in Fort Ritner. The other thing about that is the post office was there. The Fort Ritner grocery store doubled as the post office, and they had one of those windows there. I think this particular one was oak and had the little window with a vertical grated thing to where you could deal with the postmaster without actually being able to access them. And then it had all the brass and wooden boxes where people came in and picked up their mail. They had a numbered box with a key to it. They could pick up their mail in the post office. That particular post office window and those boxes that I just dearly loved and loved looking at every time I went in there is now in the Lawrence County Museum down on the Bedford Square between I Street and J Street there on the right. It's the Lawrence County Museum, and they have the old Fort Ritner post office window in there. They got a display set up. Go in there and take a look at it. Leesville, Indiana was one of the earliest settlements in Indiana. I think Bono claims to be the first settlement in Lawrence County, but there's evidence of actually a white settlement in Leesville before Bono. The country store in Leesville, and I was in both of these places. There's two buildings there, side by side. They've both been modified and closed up since they were country stores. The first one, the big brick building, they've bricked in all the windows on that. I'm not even sure what's there now, if anything's in that building, but back when I was a young man, there was an antique store in there. And before that, it had been a country store of the kind that we've been talking about in these videos. The antique store was run by a man named Andy Morrow. Andy was a young man, probably just a little older than me at the time. He lived in Bloomington. He refinished furniture. He liked the same kind of furniture I did, the Civil War era kind of stuff made out of, in this area, walnut, cherry, poplar, sometimes maple. It's the kind of stuff Andy liked. He bought and sold that stuff. I bought some things from him, and he probably bought several more things from me. Andy Morrow. I lost track of him after he left Leesville, so don't know if where he went or if he's even still living today. The other building there was the Leesville store, and it was the Leesville store for a good while, but that building wasn't even built until, I don't know, late 1900s, early 2000s. Somebody built that building, opened up a store in it, and kind of a little restaurant. It was in business for several years, maybe 30, 40 years. And then it closed, and now it's like the Bartlesville store. It's someone's residence. Let's go west now from where we started this and get over on the other side of the county. I think the first place I'll go is Hartleyville. And those of you who don't know where Hartleyville is, it is an intersection in the road between what was one time called Art Gallery Road, and I don't know if it's still called Art Gallery Road or not, because the art gallery's been gone for a lot of years, but Lawrence County Art Association did have an art gallery at the intersection of State Road 37 South and this road, and that road was called Art Gallery Road because of that art gallery there at the intersection. If you went west on Art Gallery Road until it intersected with US 50 West, there at that intersection was a grocery store. It's called Zimmerman's Grocery. That community is called Hartleyville. And that grocery store, it's gone now. There's nothing there at that intersection. But when I was a young man, and my daughter Shannon, she was a young lady. She went to kindergarten in Mitchell, Indiana, and we lived on Grandma Brown Road, which is west of that intersection. You're going out US 50 for a ways, and Grandma Brown Road then turns off to the right from US 50 out there just before you get to what most people call the Georgia Straightaway. And we lived out there. And so going to and from home, we passed that grocery store frequently. And every time I took her to kindergarten in Mitchell, we went up there and cut through, going to Mitchell to take her to kindergarten, and coming home from kindergarten, we'd pass that grocery store. And every time we passed it, she wanted to stop. I don't care if we stopped on the way to kindergarten, she still wanted to stop on the way home from kindergarten. She wanted to get some Cracker Jacks, a box of Cracker Jacks, which they sold in that store, or Neckos. If you don't know what Neckos are, they're little wafer hard candy things that come up in a rolled package, and Shannon, she liked Neckos. She liked Cracker Jacks. And so we'd stop there often, get us something to drink, get a box of Cracker Jacks, going to and from where we lived on Grandma Brown's Road. We'd stop at the Hartleyville store. On out US 50 from Hartleyville, just a few miles, is a community called Bryantsville, Indiana. The only thing there nowadays is the Bryantsville Church. It's there at the intersection of US 50 and Stumpo Bridge Road. The church, the cemetery. Just recently, my friend Emil Kern was buried in that cemetery, and I was out there, I think in March, for graveside services for Emil. But there was a time when Bryantsville had 3 churches and a store, maybe 2, a couple of blacksmith shops, various other businesses. All those old buildings are gone. There's no sign of any of it now. I don't know if I was ever at the Fayetteville store when it was just one of these little small stores. It was more of a larger grocery store, more like a modern store when I went there. But it's several years ago. We'd go in that store sometimes when I was in that area hunting. A lot of times I would be hunting out on the Wagner Farm or in a place that Bill Weddle owned out another road there from Fayetteville, and had opportunity to stop there at Fayetteville, get a sandwich and a bottle of pop. That store. They sold that store eventually to, I think, some of these Indian or other type of foreign people that were taking advantage of a program that the United States had where they could borrow money at an advantageous rate to start a business. And some of those people bought that store, and it didn't stay open very long after that. It was a thriving business until they bought it, and then they managed to do the things that whatever they did, not have the business. And so Fayetteville now has a Dollar General like everybody else. They don't have the Fayetteville store. On out the road from Fayetteville is another little community called Silverville. And Silverville had a store like this too. And I don't think I was ever in that store at Silverville. And I don't know if that building still exists or not. Seems like I was through there not too long ago for some reason or another. And that old building's still standing there, but I wouldn't swear to it. But there was one of these little country stores in Silverville. This is a lot of years ago. It had long been closed and had been used as a storage building, but they had an auction there, sell the contents of that building. And the contents, part of them were what was in the old store when it was open, and part of them were just something that somebody stored in there since the building had closed. And at that auction, I bought what was the base table for what most people would call a possum belly baker's cabinet. Usually has a top that sits on it that has doors and drawers in it, oftentimes a flour bin. And then the base of the cabinet had drawers in it and tilt out or what they call possum belly drawers that held flour and sugar in the bottom of that table. The possum belly drawers were gone. In fact, all the drawers were gone. The table that I bought was just the bare bones of the table. The top, the legs, the skirt had the holes in it for the drawers, but no drawers. And the right front leg on that table was severely warped. I don't know what happened to it, but it warped. It looked like it's more the shape of a banana than it was a table leg. I bought that thing. It sat over here in the barn for years and years because I didn't know how to fix that leg. And finally, one day I was needing a table to put in the family room and set a television on. And I thought, if I can get the leg straight on that table and find some drawers for it, I'm going to fix that table up and use it for that purpose. So I went to work on that leg and finally got it fairly straight. I built a shelf and put in between the legs at the bottom of it to set the VCR and the other things on that you needed to have a TV on top of that table. Found some drawers that were right for that kind of table and put them in it. And I painted the whole thing what that color is. I think it's got a name. It's some kind of a blue-green kind of a color. I painted that table that color and put it in our family room, set a TV on it, and it's been there for a lot of years. That table came from the Silverville store. Going out in that same area, if you go back towards, I don't know what direction that'd be, if you're going probably south, back towards Williams, there was, of course, places like that in Williams too. There's a big old store there. I'm going to call it a country store, but it was a different kind of a store. It was a big building, kind of like the building in Fort Render. Only this building was brick, had a store in it. It's called Pennick's Grocery most of the time that I knew it. I think it might have been part of the Zimmerman family too before it was Pennick's. That might have been Zimmerman's Grocery there too. I guess a lot of those Zimmermans were grocers, but I knew it as Pennick's store in Williams, and they had a store. It was a place for all the locals to congregate. A lot of them went in there at lunch and ate lunch, and they had like a little restaurant in there too. You could get good chili soup. You could get good vegetable soup. You could have them make you a sandwich out of the deli. Oftentimes they had sloppy joes or hamburgers or hot dogs, stuff like that in there as well. And I never saw a delivery box in front of that store either, but I'm going to say that surely at some point in time there was one. While I'm there, I might as well mention they turned in Williams after the high school closed. There for a while, they turned that high school or part of the high school into a restaurant. I think the name of that restaurant was Wildflower Restaurant. And it became they turned that into a kind of an apartment building, but it had that restaurant in it. And sometimes in Williams, when you stopped, you went to that little restaurant and ate instead of going to the store. But I just got going sideways there and had to tell you about that. So, Panic Grocery, Williams, Indiana. Another country store that I frequented mostly when I was out bird hunting somewhere and need to catch something for lunch. Another place that they had a country store, they still do, I'd call it a country store, there in Springville, Indiana. Now, I've been in the store at Springville recently and back in these years, several years ago, the time that I'm talking about, but mostly when I went to Springville, was in that area and needed to get something to eat. They had a little restaurant there at the crossroads in Springville. They made good biscuits and gravy in there. They had good cheeseburgers, depending on what time of day you were there. And that's where I got most of my snacks when I was out hunting in that area. But they had a country store in Springville. They still have a country store in Springville. I don't know for how much longer, because I think they've got a Dollar General there too now. Dollar General puts a lot of those little places out of business. Ville is yet another ville in northern Lawrence County. I'm sure they had a country store there at some time or another, but I was never in it. Don't think it still exists. Ville, just south of the northern border of Lawrence County, south of where Lake Monroe Reservoir is now. Started to talk to you about country store boxes and got off on this thing about country stores instead of the boxes. And then as I did that, I noticed how many villes there were in Lawrence County. It's unbelievable to me how many places were named Ville. You've heard about all of them. Some of them that you haven't heard about yet on this video is Marysville, Rabbitville, Dixonville, Scottville, Pattonville, Bottomville, and Caseyville. So I don't know how many villes that is altogether, but there's a whole bunch of villes in Lawrence County, Indiana. Maybe even some I haven't thought to mention. There's probably other little places like these that I've forgotten or I have neglected to mention where I've been in them. I know there's some in other places like Petersburg and Washington, Indiana, places like that where I went to hunt, not nearly as frequently as these, where we stopped in little places like this, because they're all over the place. Back in my early part of my life, that you could stop in a place like this, and many times we've seen the boxes like the ones that they had, and where the delivery man ran a route early in the morning before the store opened. The storekeeper unlocked the lock that was on the box, left it in the hasp unlocked. The delivery man came along and he put bread or donuts or milk, all kinds of things that they put in these boxes. And when they finished with their delivery, then they put the lock in the hasp and lock it. And when the store owner came in later on in the day, he took his key and unlocked the box and got his delivery items out of the box. That was a common practice in the old days, and it's boxes like that that I'm set out to talk about and show you some example of in this video. I'm not sure what the origin of this box was, but it could have been a box like the one I'm talking about. There's no advertising on it, but it's of the form and of the kind of box that could have been one of these boxes, or it could have just been a meal bin or some other box. I'm going to talk about meal bins in the next and I hope the last video in this series. This box here, it says Honeycrest Bread on it. It is a box much like the one I'm talking about, but it's not an original box. It probably never sat on the porch. It could have, but It probably never was on a grocery store porch because I repainted this box. It was just some other old drab color with no advertising. And I put that Honeycrest bread on it just to make it look like it was one of these. In fact, I built one of these from scratch one time and gave it to David Cosner for his birthday because his family owned grocery stores and had boxes like this, and they knew the routine about what I was talking about. I made David a box like this for what I think was his 70th birthday. If you go down to his gun shop and look around, you'll see that box that I made for him. It's much like this one. It says Honeycrest bread on it. Just another one of those boxes I had, and I sold it to, I think I sold that to Greg Connor and Lisa. They kept it for a while, and then they put it in an auction, and Roger Robinson sold it over to the Armory. They sold it before they moved to Tennessee. And I tried to buy it back at that auction, but it was a pretty popular little item there, and somebody wanted it more than I did and paid more than I'd pay for it to get it back. But that's a box I owned once, used to sit on my back porch. And I've had several other boxes like this one. Used to be delivery boxes, ended up being in somebody's collection or sitting on somebody's porch. Hope you've enjoyed this little video about bread boxes or grocery delivery boxes. Till the next time, I'm the Hard Times Guy.